Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to talk about something really controversial, and that's because it's about one of the most beloved studios in gaming right now. The kind of studio that if you say anything bad about, so many people will get really pissed. But regardless, I've been giving it a lot of thought recently, and I feel like FromSoftware is so lazy. Now hear me out. I know you guys are probably mad at me saying that, and it's not that FromSoftware games are necessarily bad, right? A lot of them are really good. I remember the first time I played Elden Ring, I adored it. But having said that, over time, after playing more and more of their games, and also after seeing all of their recent releases, I've started to wonder, are they just making the same game over and over again? And what really got me thinking about that was the recent Game Awards where they announced Elden Ring Night Reign. And it looked pretty cool, right? It's basically Elden Ring with some parkour and bringing back a lot of the bosses, not just from Elden Ring, but some of the Dark Souls games as well. And I was just sitting there and I saw a lot of people excited about this. I had a lot of buddies texting me about how cool it looked and how fun it was going to be. And I was just sitting there like, how are people okay with this? And the reason I say that is because other studios that do similar things, like let's say Call of Duty, right? Releasing the same game over and over every year with just a little twist, get shit on constantly. People get so mad at Western devs for doing the same thing, but somehow a lot of Eastern devs, primarily FromSoft, get away with it. I kind of talked about it in my previous video last week with you guys when I was discussing how I don't like JRPGs. And one of the big reasons is because they do so many lazy things that I can't believe gamers are just okay with. And I think the primary example is Metaphor ReFantazio, right? I love that game. It's the first JRPG I've ever actually liked and not hated. Don't get me wrong, it's really good. But there are so many things in that game that are beyond horribly designed. For example, in Hulkenberg's questline, right? One of the companions that I really enjoyed in the game, at the beginning of it, you literally are talking with her about an arch nemesis that she hasn't seen for a while. And he just appears out of nowhere and starts talking shit to you in a random backstreet in the random town you're in. It's beyond lazy and unbelievable. And the reason I bring it up is because I feel like it's kind of a plague that's taking over so many Eastern studios nowadays. And FromSoft might be the biggest culprit. I mean, really think about it. Every single FromSoft game, every single one, is kind of the same thing. Whether that's Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, or even Armored Core. Yeah, they all have a little bit of differences here and there. Sometimes you're a mech, sometimes you're a depressed guy in a cloak going through a really cool medieval town, and sometimes you're in these giant open world vistas. But no matter what, there's a FromSoft formula, the Souls-like formula, that every single time is so similar. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? For example, Witcher 1 is somewhat similar to Witcher 2, which is somewhat similar to Witcher 3, and we can all hope The Witcher 4 also will be somewhat similar to the entire series. But the problem with FromSoft is literally all of their games have the exact same template, with no differences. It really feels like there's no creative freedom or differences whatsoever. There's always a drab art style, the colors are always muted, there's always some weird esoteric lore that seems really interesting, but the more you look into it, it feels like someone was just on an LSD trip and now the community's hallucinating a bunch of lore and things to make it sound cool. And I don't know, I don't want to be a hater, but the more and more I play FromSoft games, and also even more so, the more I think about them afterwards, they're kind of losing a lot of their luster. I mean, think about it. Nowadays, there's so many other titles out there that have the exact same formula, and they're all so good. What about Black Myth Wukong, a game that a lot of people thought should have won Game of the Year last year? Or take something like Lies of P, personally a Souls-like that in many ways I actually like more than any of the FromSoft titles. And once again, I'm not saying they're bad. FromSoft makes some really quality titles, but the thing is, they just keep making the same thing over and over and over again, and it's starting to feel really lazy. I mean, honest to God, Elden Ring Night Reign, if a Western dev made this game, I'm just gonna call a spade, people would be outraged. They'd be screaming how lazy, how corrupt, how uncreative the studio was becoming. Could you imagine Call of Duty saying, oh, actually this year, we're not making any new maps, we're not making a new campaign, we're not making any new things in Warzone, we're just going to take things we've done before and put them into one game and you guys are going to have fun, right? Imagine Fortnite saying, no new guns, no new abilities, no new objectives, no new places on the map. And when you really think about it, Elden Ring Night Rain is just the perfect example of everything that's wrong with FromSoftware right now. I have to be honest, they're starting to feel so lazy to me. When you watch that trailer and you see the same Elden Ring guard with the same exact art design, the same exact clothes, and the same moveset with characters that barely move their lips while they're speaking, you realize that FromSoft is just rehashing the same thing over and over again. And that's not to say that thing isn't really good. I know a bunch of people love FromSoftware titles and all the bosses and the lore, and personally, while it's not for me, that doesn't mean it isn't subjectively great for a bunch of other people. But I think there's also something to be said that part of what makes a studio great, really any entertainment creators, is their ability to change and mold with the times, to come up with new ideas. When Dark Souls and Demon Souls originally came out, they were really, really unique. The combat, the design, the world, the art, it was all something that was FromSoft. It was new, it was exciting, it was something that was so good at the time that now, decades later, other studios are copying them over and over. But when other studios copy them, people often will say, oh, you're just taking from FromSoft, you're being lazy. But when FromSoft copies themselves for years on end, with little true innovation, it starts to feel really lazy. Like for example, Elden Ring, right? It's open world, something that FromSoftware hadn't done before, and that does change up the gameplay loop quite a bit. But when you start to dig into it further, you realize a lot of the enemies have the same exact animations from bosses in Dark Souls. A lot of the bosses are the same exact idea rehashed over and over again. The assets they used in previous games are being used in Elden Ring and future games, like Night Rain now, over and over and over again. And the game design has barely changed. The principles of FromSoftware games have stayed the same. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? For example, another perfect parallel would be Path of Exile. Path of Exile has been pretty similar for years and years now, and Path of Exile 2 even brings over some of the animations and enemies and boss designs from the first game, but people love them and they're happy to play that over and over again. But the problem with FromSoft is they've been doing this for so long. And I genuinely feel, maybe it's just me, I'm curious what you guys think as well, by the way, but is this not just getting old for anyone else? Like at this point, it's pretty clear what FromSoft makes, right? Medieval, old-style games with muted color tones, depressing themes, hard to understand and esoteric lore, and a grand world with some cool bosses. And don't get me wrong, that's awesome, but I think as a studio, if all you do is create the same slop, quote unquote, over and over again, how are you any better than all the other studios people love to scream at? Like Call of Duty churning out the same thing over and over again. But really, I think it's okay, right? If people like FromSoft games and they keep making what people like, I guess there's really no issue with that. But I wanted to make this video because I wanted to see if anyone else out there has this weird sinking feeling that FromSoftware's starting to get lazy. And the reason I really bring it up is because I think what made FromSoftware amazing and great in the first place is they were willing to take risks. They were willing to make the types of games that no one thought gamers would want to play. Things that were genuinely hard, that didn't have easy modes, and pushed the envelope and changed the industry as we know it, and grew FromSoft from a tiny studio trying to make games they loved into a juggernaut of the industry that claims some of the biggest reveals every year at the Game Awards. And I'm just worried that this studio is starting to get too comfortable in their mold. It doesn't feel like they're branching out as much as they did anymore. They're not trying anything new. The writing style, the design, the structure of their games has stayed the same for over a decade now. Nothing has changed. There are small things like allowing some open world flair, or different types of environments, or slightly different enemies. But at the end of the day, is a Bloodborne boss really that different from a Dark Souls boss? And is that really that different than a fight in Armored Core? The principles of combat design, of narrative structure, of everything feels lazy. Not because it's bad by any means. Trust me, it's definitely not. But it just feels like it's starting to miss something. That newness, that flair, that uniqueness that originally made these games so special in the first place. But maybe I'm wrong, right? After all, like I said before, if people are enjoying the games and no one else is making them as well, maybe just keep doing it over and over again. But I think to other studios, I brought up the Witcher example earlier, CD Projekt Red. They had worked on the Witcher series for years and years. That was pretty much all they were known for. And then when they announced Cyberpunk, the most exciting part about that was a studio that we loved, that was known for deep RPGs, was jumping into something completely different. It's like when Rockstar originally made the first Red Dead Redemption. Do you know how awesome that was? A studio that was making ridiculous amounts of money on GTA decided to make something completely different in a new setting with new themes and new game design, and it was awesome. People loved it. I just want FromSoftware to try something like that too. Imagine a sci-fi, deep CRPG from FromSoftware. Imagine a weird narrative-focused game that actually talks more about the lore of the old worlds instead of just being shown in item descriptions. It's okay that FromSoft has a formula, the Souls-like formula, and it's awesome for a lot of people. Like I said, not so much me personally, but that's not the issue. This isn't a video about me personally not liking FromSoft games. This is more a video about FromSoftware potentially losing what made them special in the first place, and what makes all studios special as well. And another perfect example to really kind of hit my point home is another studio I love, which is Owlcat. You see, Owlcat is most known for the Pathfinder series, and mostly Wrath of the Righteous. It's a huge CRPG with tons and tons of systems, really gritty dialogue, and lots of combat. But you see, I actually don't like Pathfinder that much. I love deep RPGs, and I love the ideas and the design behind Owlcat games, but I don't like Pathfinder. I just find the world and world building not very interesting at all. But when they made Rogue Trader, a Warhammer 40k game, and I tried that, it was like heaven. Suddenly, all of their systems were so much more interesting. All of the new ideas that they brought to the table, like actually focusing on turn-based combat, became so integral to the experience, and in my opinion, made it better. And the world, the themes, gameplay, and everything changed so much while retaining what made that studio special that now it's one of my favorite RPGs I've ever played, and that's from a studio whose previous RPG is one of my least favorite. It's concerning to me that FromSoftware has nothing like this. Like, let me give you a perfect parallel. If you were to tell me Rockstar Games was working on a FromSoft style game, a Souls-like, let's say, I would honestly think it's going to be awesome. I know Rockstar knows what they're doing. They're extremely talented, and I don't know what they would do, but they would probably add a ton of innovation to that market and also create a damn good game. But if you asked me, is FromSoftware capable of making GTA 6 or GTA 7? I don't really think so. And that's because, as far as we know, the only thing FromSoftware can make is Souls-like games. They don't make good games, they make good Souls-like games. And that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But it again goes back to my example with CD Projekt Red. When they made Cyberpunk 2077, and I know a lot of people hated it on release, personally, I think it was super overblown, and I will argue that to my deathbed, but regardless, most people nowadays agree that Cyberpunk is amazing. And to see a studio pull that off, a completely different genre, first person instead of third person, shooting instead of sword and board, and also completely different themes and ideas, to see a studio go from The Witcher to Cyberpunk in one game and pull it off that well shows why CD Projekt Red is amazing. When you see Rockstar make GTA 5 followed up by Red Dead Redemption 2, that's when you realize that these guys are special. Not because of the type of game they make, but because no matter what game they make, it's something special. But I'm starting to think that FromSoftware might not actually be that special. Can they actually write amazing dialogue? Can they truly create quests that last with us for years? Could they create a main world and narrative that isn't drab and depressing and muted by gray themes? Can they? I honestly don't know. I'd like to think so, but all they've made over the past couple of decades now is the same thing over and over and over again. And honestly, that's lazy. If any other dev did that, especially Western devs, people would be calling them out. They'd be saying they're a one-trick pony and they have nothing else in their belt. So all I'm saying is I want to see if FromSoft has something else in their belt. Can they create a game that not only selfishly I would enjoy more, because I'm not a huge fan of the Souls-like formula, but a game that could capture the hearts and souls of people, but in a different way? Because no matter how good your game design is, your structure, your idea, eventually, over time, people get bored of the same thing. It's the whole reason that there's so few content creators that can stay relevant over time, because your opinions, your ideas, and how you say them, if you don't constantly change them up and try new things and take risks, you'll never be as great as the people that do. And I just hope FromSoftware still has it in them to take those risks that they need to in order to create the types of games that have made them the studio they are today. But once again, let me know down below. Do you guys think I'm totally wrong? I could be completely off base here. I know a ton of people love the Souls-like games and they just want more and more and more, kind of like people that love Call of Duty. So maybe that's the way FromSoft should go. But to me, I think what made them special is that uniqueness and what they brought to the table that others didn't. But now that so many people are bringing the same thing to the table at a very high bar, I think it's time they try and change the industry again. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm really enjoying making these more casual videos with you guys, just talking at the camera, and I hope you guys are liking them too. So let me know down below your thoughts on this video and also what else you guys want to see in the future, because I really want to start doing these. You know, on my main channel, I have to put in hours and hours of work into every single video, right? Just because sometimes they're hour-long documentaries or deep dives into game design. So it's kind of nice to just come in and shoot the shit with you guys for a little bit. So once again, thank you so much. I hope you all have a fantastic time, and welcome to the new year. I'll see you next time.